to our third installment of these Facebook Live audio rooms that we've been doing, talking about a number of really cool topics in tech. We've already done the future of home automation. We've already done Linux, then, now, and the future. And today's topic is one that is very near and dear to my heart. It is, how do you handle tech and children? How do these two things mix? It's one of those questions that there's no real right answer, just a lot of wrong answers. And so on the note of getting wrong answers, I've invited a couple of special guests to join me here today, both of whom are either relatively new or relatively experienced fathers, to talk about how they're handling tech, what they expected their lives to be like, and how it's actually panned out. So I've got James from the team here at Linus Media Group, and then I've also got the one and only Brian, the electrician. Hey guys, how you doing today?
Hey boss.
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing pretty good.
So, I think I'm gonna kick things off really quick here and say, I thought that I was going to be like this might not be intuitive, but I thought I was going to end up being kind of hardcore against my kids using tech. I had kind of imagined that they weren't going to watch any TV. They weren't going to learn how to use a smartphone until they were teenagers, basically. I didn't get a phone until I was, I'm trying to think, 16 is when I got a phone. I figure if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for them. It didn't turn out that way at all. I want you guys to talk about what you expected in terms of how you were going to deal with tech in your kids and how it ended up.
Yes, I actually had a similar experience. So I think it's probably helpful just for everyone to talk about what kind of kids they got. So there's 3 in my household. 2 of them are under 2. So I have a son who is, what day is it today? Damn, I think he's 2 months old today. And then I have a daughter who's 2 years old. And then I'm the guardian of my little sister who's 15. And speaking about the toddler, I really thought before I had kids that screen time would be so limited. But then it turns out they're really full on and really, really annoying. And if you can get them to watch Blippi for half an hour while you just, I don't know, go to the bathroom, that's really, really hard to resist that power.
Yeah, I don't know. We've got 2 kids, age 3 and 5, and I had kind of the similar expectations, and I don't know. We've done I think pretty good at keeping going with that as far as limiting how the tech that they use, how much TV they watch, that type of thing. Because the one thing that I've really noticed is if we start letting them watch a lot of TV, they start misbehaving afterwards. You tell them, okay, it's time to turn it off. We got to do something else, and that's when the tantrums and everything start.
Okay.
So,
what about? Do you think, Brian? Sorry to interrupt you, but do you think it depends on the content?
Oh, James, you're getting out ahead of me here. I had that teed up.
I don't know that it's necessarily really dependent on the content. I think it's just if it's something that they want to watch, and then they get into watching it for a while, and then okay, it's time to turn it off, and then it's like, well, no, I want to keep watching it, and so we've really tried to limit how much TV they watch, just because their behavior goes downhill if we let them watch too much. So,
Brian, when you say TV, do you mean TV, or are you talking about
Netflix?
Because there's a difference. I find there's a difference even between Netflix and YouTube, because with YouTube, like I put a smart TV in my kid's room when we recently moved, and you'll put on, you put on Blippi, you come back a little while later, and it could be on to a whole different channel. And some of these are they're really long videos. So for example, one is like Coco Melon is the channel my daughter likes, and it's little animated songs. But sometimes there's songs in there, like in the middle of a half an hour video, there's a 2-minute song that is so toxic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to tell the algorithm, like, hey, she loves this channel, but skip this one video. So for example, of songs that are toxic, there's a song where the kid is getting fed and the little baby goes, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. Like, no, no, no. And just basically being insubordinate. So that's how my daughter learned to go like, no, to stuff. There's
You
a
might as well
song.
put on Caillou.
Yeah.
There's this. Oh, I love that. There's a song that's all about Taekwondo. It's like Taekwondo, 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 hee ha, and then she ran up and kicked my wife in the head while she was doing yoga, just singing this Taekwondo song. I'm like, why did you teach our kids this? Why would you make this?
So, okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to dig into. First of all, I want to push you guys to be more specific. You both use terms like screen time. You both use terms like too much. What does that mean? How many hours a day do your kids actually look at a screen, and are you okay with it?
I'm okay with 0.
Yeah.
And I'm ashamed to. I would be ashamed to tell you, like, it's gotten to the point where the TV is kind of always on for her, like in her room or even in the living room sometimes, and she's not always actively watching it. She'll be playing with her toys, like stacking blocks and counting and stuff. But she might even be on the balcony playing with like this water thing she has. But if you turn it off, she like knows instantly and yells at you. So the best approach that I've got is to either never turn it on, or I found that if I just play music, like even if it's my music, that'll be okay. But if it's just completely off, she'll like throw the remote at me and like demand that it's on. It's actually really hard to break out of that cycle.
I'm really glad you brought that up. This is something that my wife and I have debated a lot because we both came from very, very different cultures in terms of TV and our consumption patterns. So I lived in a house where the TV literally was not allowed to be turned on until after dinner. And it wasn't a time of day. It was until after the family had sat down, consumed a meal together. And that meant that if you had a little sister who sat and didn't eat her food, you wouldn't have enough time to watch a movie that night because the TV was not allowed to be turned on until everyone had eaten their dinner, at which point you could be excused from the table. So TV,
that is amazing.
TV was not a central part of my life really growing up. Now, the funny thing about that, okay, my childhood's a little complicated because I didn't live with my siblings and with my mom, like that side of my family, until I was 11. So before that, I lived with my father, and honestly, it was there was no rigid structure, but my dad is the kind of guy who is in his element when he's like on a beach somewhere. Like to him, TV is just irrelevant. So my mom was very controlling about it, and my dad was just like, why does this even need to exist? Why is there even one in the house? I don't understand it. No, you can't watch TV. Like, why do you even want to watch TV? Like, it was very much like that. But at least I like had a Super Nintendo at my dad's house. So I came for the majority of my formative years, I would say, from a household where TV was not on, unless we were actively having like movie night or watching the playoffs or something like that.
So how does that reconcile in your relationship now and your approach to your kids?
So Yvonne, my wife, came from a house where the TV is always on, literally always on. It takes on that fireplace role. You know, we're cavemen. We need some kind of flickering light.
Yeah, my when I first met my now wife, her house was like that too, and she wasn't a cord cutter at the time. They had cable, and it was gross TV. It would be like My 600-Pound Life or like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, just always there. And eventually, when she moved, I just convinced her to not hook up cable again. And until we had kids, there was just never TV on unless we were, watching a movie together.
Yeah.
And so I guess where I'm trying to get to here is that we both had extremely different experiences, both with how we grew up consuming TV. Like Yvonne couldn't figure out how to do homework without the TV on when I met her. Like she was so used to that background noise.
What about sleeping?
Sleeping, no. Both of us were in one TV household. So there was no TV in the bedroom or anything like that. So what I want to say is that one of the things that she and I debated a lot, because when we talked about how to raise kids, was I kind of went, well, look, we don't want them to get in the habit of just like sitting slack-jawed staring at a TV all the time. That's not how I grew up. Go read a book. And she kind of went, well, hold on a second. If you are turning TV into this coveted kind of commodity, right? Where it's so precious that when you get a chance, or when you manage to sneak a chance to watch TV, you're going to just want to do nothing but that. She goes, I don't think that's healthy. I think the TV should just be on often enough that you just kind of learn to ignore it. So is that where you feel like you've arrived, where the TV's always on to the point where it honestly just isn't really a distraction?
You mean me? Like for my daughter? I don't know, man. It's annoying for us because we're adults and we don't want to hear these crappy kid songs all day. It sucks. Sometimes my wife puts it on like way too loud. But I don't know. I feel like all of this is way easier than the phone. The phone, now that I have a 15-year-old in the house, that is a whole different ball of wax. It's way more challenging. Are your oldest kid's 11, Linus?
My oldest is 9. So mine are 9, 7, and 5. And my oldest son has had his own phone for over a year now.
Wow.
Does he have a SIM card?
He does.
So does he have data?
That was a big part of the reason that we started. Yes, he has data. So I want to get into that a little bit later. First, I wanted to kick it back to Brian. How many hours a day do you think your kids are in front of a screen, and are you okay with it?
I would say, I mean, there are days that honestly, I don't think they have any screen time. And I mean, when we do, it's really more of a reward, if they've actually been behaving, or or the odd time that we do need to break. Okay, yeah, we might put a show on for them for an hour or something. Like, right now they're upstairs watching a TV show so that they're not running down here. But it's generally, like you do there, James, or Linus, doing a movie night. It's outside of that, it's really 1, maybe 2 hours a day, if that. If it's a day that they're watching any at all. I mean, that said, I do have an old computer set up for them to play a couple old kids games and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're really only on that if I'm down here with them.
I was going to ask you guys that, actually. Do you guys differentiate about what they're doing? Like, let's say like Raiden has a phone. Yeah. Would you say he's allowed to, or you would prefer let's say he played an hour or 2 hours of games? Is that preferential to 1 to 2 hours of TV or to TikTok?
It depends on what the content is. If it's something educational, I don't really have an issue with them doing it, or with if they're doing it for longer than I would or than we would otherwise allow. Like the games I have for them on the computer here are they're I mean, they're older educational titles, right? So I don't have a problem with them jumping on and playing with that as kind of as they please, as long as they're not fighting over it, right?
That is such an important point. Okay, I am so glad you touched on that, because from our point of view, one of the ways that I differentiate is active versus passive entertainment. Yeah. And again, this comes from my upbringing. I didn't watch a lot of TV, but what I did manage to negotiate a lot of the time was access to the computer. And in my experience, there's things about the TV consumption process that are inherently less healthy. I think you are less engaged. I think your hands are free to be consuming snacks and junk food. And I think there's something to be said for actively engaging with whatever it happens to be that you're doing. But I also draw a clear line between educational versus non-educational content. So if the kids come to me and they're like, oh, we want to watch Magic School Bus, I kind of go, well, Magic School Bus is a shadow of its former self. The original books by Joanna Cole and Bruce, I forget what his last name is, but the original books were much more information dense, and those ones I'll read to them anytime they want. But by and large, I would rather they're watching that or Wild Kratts or something that at least has some kind of educational value compared to if they come to me and they say they want to watch Beyblade's Stadium or whatever that show they were hooked
Okay,
on
but what
for a
about in
while was.
gaming?
Yeah.
Do you have the same thing with gaming? Like you'd rather them play an in-depth kind of story game or RPG versus just I don't know, Angry Birds?
So there is, yeah, man, you guys are hitting me with some of the hardest questions. Casual gaming like Angry Birds, I feel like it's fair to say that that's the kind of game that you'll mostly pick up when you're kind of not doing anything. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Like, it's
Well,
the kind of game. Yeah,
I'm sorry
Absolutely.
that I used that example not only because it's like 10 years old, but also like a game that, let's say, has a grindy kind of freemium game that, I don't know, just really has a really short, like the TikTok of games, basically, like a short attention span kind of grindy dopamine game. Would
I do
that bother you more
differentiate.
than like a Skyrim?
Absolutely. So, okay. So the way that I've differentiated so far is one of the carrots that I've dangled over my kids is that they're not allowed to play single player games until they learn to read. Because the truth of it is that you are not able to fully appreciate a single player game other than, ooh, I'm looking at the shiny lights, until you are actively engaged with it and you're reading and you're trying to understand what's going on. It's also because I don't want to end up just sitting there doing every puzzle for them because they couldn't understand any of the hints. And for both my eldest and my second, that has already been a large motivating factor for them. Once they're, first starting to get it and they're starting to sound out words, but they don't understand a full sentence yet. So that's one thing. And number two is that I'm far more lenient when it comes to gaming time if they're playing with each other. So one of the games that they play a lot of is Spelunky. Another game that they like to play together is Mario Kart. And as long as this comes back to what Brian was saying, as long as it doesn't become something that's causing a fight, I'm okay with them on a weekend when I need some time to myself, 2 to 3 hours. That happens on a fairly regular basis in our house. Also, sometimes nothing. And on weeknights, I'd say it's really anywhere from the 1 to 1.5 range. Now, bringing up Angry Birds and, how to differentiate one type of content from another. Now, so James, I shouldn't say none of your kids have phones because your sister, who you are the legal guardian of now, does have a phone. But phones are a little bit more challenging because I find I'm a lot more comfortable when a game is being played on the TV because it's an essential place. I can see what they're doing. I can see if they're engaging in any kind of toxic behavior with each other, and I can stamp that out really quickly.
The aspect of that stands out to me is how you said it's the place aspect, because even if my toddler watches TV and sometimes we use TV to distract her and stuff, I draw the line at devices like iPads and phones because they come with you. I don't want to be the parent that uses that to soothe my kid while we're waiting at the doctor's office or in a restaurant. Or like when I see a child in a stroller with a screen in front of them, I think that is a really bad path to go down. I'm not saying I've never done it. Sometimes.
But making it a regular
sucks.
thing is the issue.
I don't even like to show my daughter sometimes my wife will take Instagram stories with her and put filters on her and stuff. I don't even want her to know that my phone is fun. I don't want her to ever want to be looking at it. And so that's why I don't like iPads and stuff, because they'll just want it 24/7. Even if we go to the park, she'll still want it. And so I don't even want her to know that's a thing.
Now, something I want to be really clear about for all of our listeners right now is we are not saying that we have the answers at all. I think I speak for everyone. We're just talking about this big challenge, right? It's babies having babies. Nobody goes into parenthood knowing exactly how they're going to do it. And if anything, I think the stories we've told so far have demonstrated just how different our lives have ended up being compared to what we thought. Now, that's not, the location thing is not one that I really thought about, to be perfectly honest with you, but it's one that unintentionally, we're exactly the same way. I can count on my hands and toes the number of times that my kids have had an electronic device to distract them in a car or, in transit or in a restaurant. I
So
don't
question.
Yeah.
Well, then your eldest has a phone. So are there rules about him using it in the car?
Absolutely. So, thankfully, I mean, it's great. Parents have so many tools these days to manage their kids' electronics time. Some of them I don't use. Some of them I like to keep just on the trust system. My kids actually technically have a computer in their room and there's no password on it, but not one of them. I mean, maybe they just know that I've never even said don't turn it on unless I give you permission, but not one of them has ever turned it on without asking me ahead of time, and they always turn it off when they're done, so I know if they're on it. Anyway, what I was going to say was, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, in the car, because one thing I noticed is, like, I inherited a teenager. I'm 32 years old and we have a 15-year-old, and so I didn't get to incrementally introduce the concept of a phone to her.
Sure.
And when she first moved in, she didn't have a SIM card here. So if we left the Wi-Fi zone of the house and got in the car, or if we were at a restaurant, well, that was great because she didn't have data, so she had to just hang out with us. But then, of course, she made some friends here, and then she goes to the mall with them, and then we need the SIM card. Well, now when I get in the car with her, she can just continue scrolling. Or when we're at a restaurant, I have to tell her, hey, like, put that thing away. And it's much more difficult. So how have you been doing with that?
So, I mean, she's past the age where I feel like it's applicable, but Google has this great app called Family Link that allows you to limit which apps they have access to, how long you can use it, during which hours. And the one thing that's really missing is that YouTube now has an option to enable a much broader amount of content for kids over, I think it's over 8 or something like that. So my son actually has access to most of what is not hyper toxic YouTube, although it's algorithmic, obviously. So there's no guarantee of what he's actually got access to. And I can't see a watch history for it. So the way I laid it out with him was, because after I enabled that, I noticed that 44 of 45 minutes, basically every day, was in the YouTube app. And I was like, hey, what are you watching? And we had to have a really tough conversation where he kind of dodged my question initially. And I was like, so who are you watching? Because I'm a YouTuber, obviously, right? I'm pretty familiar with what people do on YouTube. And he goes, oh, I don't remember the name. It's like Minecraft videos. And I'm like, okay. I'm going to let you try this one more time. Who are you watching? And he tells me a name. I hop on the channel. It's all super wholesome. No big deal. No harm-ish, no foul-ish. But I am not a huge fan of sitting and consuming Let's Play content. This is, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I don't think it's particularly educational. So I laid down with him that, look, you can have access to YouTube, but when we gave you a phone, the deal was you're using it for communication and you are using it for learning. If I see Duolingo in your use history, that's fine. If I see wordscapes, no problem. Working on vocab, working on spelling, totally comfortable with that. I'm going to subscribe you to a handful of channels that you are allowed to watch, and we can sit down together and we can find more if you get tired of them. So I subscribed him to Veritasium. I subscribed him to Smarter Every Day. He's obviously subscribed to our own channels. And I'm just trying to think if there's a handful of other ones. But basically, the idea is that's what I want you using this for. And you can just ask me if you want to watch Minecraft videos. But understand that watching Minecraft videos is watching TV. And watching Veritasium or Smarter Every Day, or something that at least has an educational element to it, I consider it to fall into a different category. And he kind of went, okay. And we haven't had a problem with that since.
Okay, I have 2 comments about that. Number one, Family Link I did use, but then when she turned 13, I got an email from Google saying, yeah, she can just turn this off now. So I guess that's the age where they're like, oh yeah, she's old enough to give us money. And on that point, so your son is on YouTube, and there's an algorithm or a system of algorithms learning his preferences. And he may not realize it yet, but he's engaging in this like kind of trust economy or data economy that he doesn't really quite understand. And I'm just wondering if the zeitgeist of how we protect our data and think of our data and its worth will change by the time he does understand it. By the time he's 18 or 20, will he be like, why the heck did you get me to spit in this vial and sign up for 23andMe when I was a baby without me consenting to that? Why the hell did you let me go on YouTube or why did you upload photos of me to Facebook so now they have facial recognition biometrics of me? I did not consent to that. So where do you guys land on that?
I don't use really any cloud services myself. Any backups or anything, it's all on local drives on my own network. Even Facebook or really any social media. Honestly, I don't really use it a whole lot. We don't really put any personal information out there.
But you do watch YouTube.
Yes,
So,
I do watch
that's
YouTube.
what James is talking about, because even just by consuming content, you are informing these algorithms.
Yeah. As far as that content for our kids, it's really just, it might be a couple little clips of kids shows or something like that, but it's honestly not really a bridge that we've crossed yet, because we don't really feel that they're old enough to be looking around on YouTube by themselves either, right? It's that, any kind of video content that they're watching, really it's shows on Netflix or, it's some educational computer games or that type of thing. But it's where we've really been trying to focus is having them actually playing with toys or, doing sidewalk chalk outside or, stuff like that. And trying to have them figure out, the world itself rather than just things by watching and engaging with media.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is really the foundation of this entire discussion, right? If you guys are just joining us now, the topic today is, should we let our babies use tech? And, we're going into kind of detail about our own experiences as fathers, how they, how we feel about, our kids' data being accessed by these large companies, how we feel about the way that they're shaped by their experiences interacting with technology. And Brian, that's such an interesting point to bring up, because really the question is, what is the world? So you say, I want them drawing with sidewalk chalk, or I want them using a pen and paper, or I want them, looking at this faraway place in person. I want them to travel. But the world is changing. What percentage of art do you, just off the top of your head, I want a gut feeling from you. What percentage of art today is created digitally versus with Stone Age tools, like a rock scraping on another rock?
I would say probably a vast majority of art now is digital, but where my point is, that the technology aspect of it will come in time. As they get older, they get more comfortable with it. They'll learn how to use it, and that the way the world's going, it's important that they'll learn how to use it. But simply engaging with the physical world around them, learning how to, build something with blocks or, or build a computer with dad. It's hands-on as opposed to watching media or, drawing a picture. It's a lot easier, I think, for them at a young age to do it actually with their hands, with a pen and paper, than it is trying to do it on screen with a mouse.
So let me jump in. Would you consider them sitting and doodling in MS Paint and printing them out? Would you even really consider that screen time?
That I would probably lump it in more as educational type of thing. They're being creative. They're still learning. They're drawing. It's that type of thing I don't have an issue with. It's still screen time. I'd still want them doing, something else eventually, but it's something I'd be a lot more lenient to them spending time doing.
What about you, James?
I agree with Brian. I think an age plays a role there. I think the younger they are, the more tactile I'd like their experiences to be. You need to develop those motor skills, and it transfers into coordination for, not just sports, but also, are you going to be able to drive a car, or can you walk without falling? So I think, but by the time you're like 11 and 12, if you're drawing on a tablet or something, by then I think that's fine because you probably mastered the other parts.
Now, let's change gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about content consumption, whether it's passive or active or educational. And I think it sounds like we're kind of on the same page where, James, it seems like you guys take quite a different approach with sort of passive engagement with content. But I think we all kind of draw those lines and we have a different set of rules where whether it's educational or non-educational and passive or active, you could kind of draw like a 2x2 grid. And if it's active and educational, that's the thing we're most comfortable with. And passive and non-educational would be the diagonally opposite square. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, passive and non-educational, for us, it's more of a reward or it's a once in a while type of thing.
And then I wanted to come back to that because that comes back to my debate with my wife. If you treat TV or passively engaging with technology as a reward, are you creating a mystique around it that could lead to an unhealthy relationship with it once they are allowed access? Like the kid that grows up not being allowed to eat candy except on very special occasions gets their first paycheck and goes and buys 32 pounds of candy. Do you foresee that?
No, I think that may have been true in the past, more true in the past than it is today. And the reason is our brains are very plastic. And when you're using, this is particularly true of social media as your kids get older. So for example, I watch my little sister use Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. And these are these news feeds of content that they're tuned for what she likes. And the content is very brief. And so she's flicking her thumb to the next piece of content, watching it for 1 minute or less, and then flicking to the next piece. And there are brain centers inside of her head that are disproportionately larger. Like there's more matter for the brain centers that are activated by these apps than on a kid who doesn't use those. So I think actually that it's kind of like the more you use it, the more sick you will be with the newest social media.
Now let's change gears and let's talk about, rather than content, let's talk about sort of lifestyle and habits. Could you be harming your child by denying or by giving them tech? So let's start with, do you think tech could make kids lazy? Like would you avoid or would you intentionally go out of your way to install something like smart lights that can be turned on and off with voice? How do you feel about that?
I have them. I don't know if, when I think about like laziness, I don't really, well, maybe you do have to get off your butt to hit the light switch, I guess. I don't know. It makes me think, the first thing I thought of was Trello. We have Trello, which is just like a, organizational productivity app. I actually use it in my house for chores. And prior to using it, I just had a thing like, hey, this is how much money you can make a week. And these are the things you're supposed to do every day. But that wasn't really working. So then I made a Trello card for each chore. And now I'm like, you can make way more money if you do all of these things. And every time you're done one, you slide it to the top. And at the end of the day, we count it up. So it's really on you. You can make $0 or you can make X dollars.
So this is with your 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And this is in lieu of an allowance.
It's her allowance is just completely like commission. It's piece pay.
Interesting.
And so I put like a ton of different chores on there. It's like walk the dog in the morning, walk the dog at night, empty the dishwasher, load the dishwasher, vacuum, litter box, just like everything is on there. And so there's a minimum amount that I expect. But if she's like really wants to make some cash that week, or if she has to dig herself out of the hole because she spent a bunch of money on Apple products without anyone knowing, then there's a lot of things she can do.
That's
That's a good
very
idea.
interesting. Okay,
I
so
like that.
I mean, that almost leads into an entirely separate discussion about sort of how can we use technology to parent better. But let's shelve that for now. So,
Well,
Brian, your thoughts on things like smart home? Are you creating bad habits that could lead to kids being sedentary if you allow them to control things with their voice rather than just like getting up and flicking light switches, little things like that?
well, I think, I mean, whether it's smart home devices or television or games or any tech, I mean, as far as laziness or, not being lazy goes, I think really it depends a lot on the child. Um, it depends a lot on their own motivations, and there is really no blanket, yes, this is a good or bad solution. It's really situation dependent. If you have a kid that's, active otherwise, having smart home devices, I don't think is really going to make much of a difference. But if you have someone that, or a child that isn't very motivated or that does spend a lot of time sitting around, I could see it being harmful.
Now, I want to go back to that. How do you use tech to enhance the parenting experience or enhance your own effectiveness? James, I thought that Trello hack was an amazing one. Brian, is there anything that comes to your mind?
Um, I would say, honestly, just educational content or maybe videos. If we're trying to teach them something, it's nice having a visual aid or something that we can pull up
Sure.
Yes.
that might be better at explaining something than we are, or that might have more information than we have.
I've used YouTube to help me remember how to do grade 9 math.
There you
So
go.
I absolutely, I think it can be a good thing in that regard, and useful in that regard.
So then, what if I came to you guys and I said, one of the things that helps me be a better parent is the fact that I have a camera system all over my house, with the exception of bedrooms and bathrooms, obviously, that I can use to, well, surveil my kids. Is that okay? Should I
I
be
have
doing that?
this. I actually have this, and this is actually messed up as well because because my child's room is upstairs, and she's up and down all day now that she can do stairs, and you don't want her to be up there alone all the time, but you
See, I
also
thought
don't
you were
want to
talking
have.
about the teenager for a minute. So we're back to the toddler now, right?
That's right, yeah, and you want to check on her like frequently, and it's been really handy to just have a camera in her room that I can switch to see what she's doing. Now, I had to make sure that it has a unique password that is very long and strong and is not used anywhere else. And there's two-factor enabled and all those good things. And there is still risk that it could get compromised.
Yep.
And that someone could speak to her through it and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I will say, this is the thing, though. There is always a value proposition with tech. For example, I have a 2-month-old baby. Since he's been 4 weeks old, he has his own wearable. He has a smart sock that he wears at night. Why? Because tragically, we have an extended family member who lost a 3-month-old child due to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome.
Infant death syndrome. Yeah.
They just woke up one day and their little baby had passed away. And when that happened, my sister-in-law immediately bought for herself and us this smart sock and mailed it over. And it measures oxygen level and heart rate. And if any of those parameters go below a certain threshold, the thing beeps really loudly and will wake you up so you don't have to wait till the morning to intervene. And of course, that is taking biometric data from this little baby. And I didn't read the terms of service.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're selling that to Facebook or selling it to someone else who could monetize it in the future or build a profile from it. Probably they're not, but I'm just ignorant. But the value proposition is so strong because the risk is so catastrophic that I'm consenting for him and I'm letting him wear that device every night.
See,
well, it's a safety thing.
Right, but it's so easy to go over what would have been your own comfort zone line because of safety or because of, in my case, the surveillance thing. I had never imagined myself as someone who would have cameras all over my house. But one of the ways that I've used it, and hopefully my kids never watch this, one of the ways that I've used it is as a test, right? Because if I call home, for example, and I say, what are you guys doing right now? My kids just inherently think, and obviously they know the cameras are there, right? Like, I didn't hide them from them or anything like that, but they're kids, right? They don't really think about it. So my kids never lie because they have it ingrained in them that dad will know if they're lying. Mom and dad are definitely going to know if you lie, so you better not bother. And one of the ways that I have built that perception is using the cameras. I have called home at times when we were on a little bit shakier ground with our middle child, particularly, when she was not being 100% honest and immediately. That's what we expect. We called, we said, hey, what are you doing? And honestly, she wasn't doing anything too bad, but it wasn't what she was supposed to be doing. And I basically came home. I didn't address it at exactly that time because I wanted to let it stew for a little while. And I came down, we had a talk. I basically said, look, you understand how this works, right? Did we be honest with mom and dad? Yes. Okay. Were you completely honest with me today? No. Okay. A, why? And B, you understand that there are key privileges that you will simply never have in this house if we can't count on you to be 100% honest. Because the thing is, she really wants a phone like her big brother. And the rule for phones is that if you get caught in one lie, you are done. And I will wait a long time to try that again. A year, 2 years maybe. Like, I have zero tolerance for lying because lying is a direct impediment to my ability to parent you. If you, like, say, for example, one of the biggest fights I ever had with my youngest, it was literally 3 hours of crying and yelling and at me and all this kind of stuff, was she slipped something in her mouth and I said, what was that? And she swallowed it and wouldn't tell me. And I went, this cannot stand. I was pretty sure that it was a blueberry. I was pretty sure it was totally innocuous, but I wasn't 100% sure. So that was sort of an illustration of why I simply cannot parent you if you are going to lie to me, because I need to be able to help you make decisions. So I have used cameras. I have used surveillance of my children to validate the stories they're telling me and to give them this perception that I am somehow omniscient and they will never get away with lying to me. And it's one of the reasons that that computer never gets turned on without my permission, because they know I'll know, or they think that I will know. But sometimes I feel guilty. Should I be watching my kids all the time?
I think it depends a lot. Again, it comes down to age and your particular kids. If you have kids that are trustworthy and that they're older and that, then yeah, that I could see that being a little creepy. But
well, here's a question for you guys.
What if this was how I made them trustworthy? Do the ends justify the means?
Well, it depends if you take it away.
And when you're trying to teach them, in the situation that you've used it, I don't see an issue with it. But as they get older, I could see them feeling that you don't trust them because the cameras are around.
So Linus said he doesn't have cameras in his kids' bedrooms and stuff, but my kid's camera is. She's 2. At what age should I remove the camera?
I mean, our eldest is 9. Our youngest is 5. I would say I'm comfortable with a camera in the room of my youngest, and I feel like my eldest is too old to have a camera in his room.
I would think maybe like 5 or 6 or something like that. I would want to be able to trust them and not have a camera in there. Like, I obviously do not have a camera in the teenager's room, obviously, and I think even aside the creepiness factor of that, like any kid who's past puberty, no. But even aside from that, I just feel like at that point they really have their own liberties that you should be respecting. Like, I don't want my kids to live in a panopticon.
No, exactly. And as your kids get older, if they've proven themselves to be trustworthy, then I don't see any reason for it. I mean, granted, there are other reasons to having cameras in the house. Just security for one. If you have a break-in or something, it's can be useful in that situation. But as far as actually using them for surveillance, as your kids get older, I think it's reasonable that, they're going to expect some privacy and not going to be be watched all the time.
Now that brings us back really well to, well, privacy from whom, right?
Yeah.
From us is what we're talking about now, but
Yeah.
do you think there should be more aggressive laws around privacy and data protection for minors?
Absolutely.
Well, what would that look like? I mean,
Yeah, what would that look like?
It could interact with the permissions on your phone. So, for example, one permission, like people are always talking about microphone permissions and location permissions, but no one really talks about contacts permissions. And it's actually so invasive that an app can ask you to share your contacts. And then, so I'm friends with Linus. Linus shares my contact, his contact list, and I'm part of it. He shares that with an app. And then I didn't consent, but this app now knows some things about me. It might know my phone number. It knows that I'm connected to him. And so then the reason they do this is so if and when I sign on to their app, they can give me a good experience right away because they know some stuff about me. They know who I'm friends with, and they know the interests of those friends who are already users. So it actually is a great experience, but it's just messed up that I don't consent to that at all. And if you're talking about a network of children, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah. I mean, it could come down to, on a phone, like for something like a phone, just having a setting where, this user is under the age of 13. And
well,
so
that's the way it's handled on Android is when you first set up the phone, the Google account that you sign into first, if the birth date is set to some year before 18 years ago, then the phone will automatically be configured in kid mode, and then you have to have an accompanying parent account that controls app access control, like my son can't install an app without me specifically approving it, and little things like that.
You know what I would love? No selfie camera. No selfie camera. Because as your children get into teenage years, especially girls, their self-image and self-value changes so much. And when you have a young woman in your house who is spending a lot of time looking at these projected and curated images of other women, it just totally morphs and distorts their body image. And now you've got, like, they're spending all day just looking at these unrealistic bodies and comparing themselves to others.
Okay,
and I would just love if the camera could be turned off.
Here's my challenge to you. What's the difference? So we go back to something like the light switch, right? Our smart light's going to make us lazy. Well, yeah, if you believe that, then why do you have a dishwasher? Why do you have a car? Why don't you just walk? So you want to talk about no selfie camera? Well, why don't you throw away all of your magazines and all of your mirrors? Because they're all technology. It's just what we're used to.
Yeah. Or just turn the phone around.
Well, here, I can defend that in many ways. Like, for one, those magazines are probably not filled with other kids, like kids in your class. Those magazines don't have little hearts and likes attached to them. So you want to, everybody could guess who the popular kid was in their high school, like from millennials. But you don't have to guess now. You can just count the likes, count the followers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And I was mostly just playing devil's advocate, but keep coming with it, because I think this is a really important conversation. What is the line between technology and not technology? Every generation probably considers a different line. What is technology, right?
And today, I think it's funny, actually. I think it's almost like a meme that, like, particularly men don't realize how edited all the images on the internet are. Like, today, like, almost literally every single picture has been gone through Facetune. Facetune's an app. Many of its features are free. Many phones that ship today have Facetune-like features built into their native camera apps, where you can beautify, you can smooth out, make the eyes bigger. But Facetune has gotten so good now at being able to just trim off a double chin or a tricep or a waistline that you don't like without distorting the background, that it can be really difficult to detect. And so you've got these distorted, unrealistic depictions of girls and women and just all people all over the internet all the time. So there's no concept of what's real and how I fit into the world. It's just the ideals seem to be like normal, like everybody's reaching this ideal, but I'm not.
So how do you help? I mean, oh man, see, I don't have to deal with this for a while, but how do you help your kids engage with that as they start dating? Like I'm dating myself a little bit here, but my wife and I got together very young. We got together when we were 19, I think. And so I've been out of the dating game for almost over 15 years, right? Internet dating to me is still like, oh, that's weird. They got together, they met online.
No,
right? Like,
Linus, no. Today it's like, oh, you guys met offline? That's crazy.
Yeah. So for me, I'm trying to think about how I'm going to talk to my kids. This is going to be a real generational gap between me and them, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm fairly hip and with it. Like I understand how YouTube works pretty darn well. I engage with social media.
But you don't know anything about TikTok.
I reluctantly am engaged with it enough. I fundamentally understand how it works at the very least. Like I literally, have to work with you actually to design KPIs for someone who maintains a presence on this platform with me. Like I'm way more engaged with it than if I was just like, I don't even have that. I've never even installed the app. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm up with the gaming memes. I know how to use Discord. Like that's
a big one.
That's not a generational gap for me and my kids, because my kids are already using Discord as their primary social network, right? So I'm pretty, hip and with it as far as most of what they're doing goes. But when it comes to dating, I'm going to be a dinosaur, man. I'm going to have no idea what's going on. I don't know. And like, I know enough about engaging with people online. Like I remember my first real social network, aside from MSN Messenger, was the
ICQ?
Palace. Do any of you remember?
Oh, is that
Palace?
like a Habbo Hotel, or like
It was a
Coke?
predecessor to Habbo Hotel. Yeah. And so
But that was just like a disembodied chat. Like, well, you were embodied, but you had an avatar that was like an 8-bit cartoon or something like that, right? So people weren't. See, the thing that you were probably that is the most vastly different today compared to us. When I was in college, rarely and sometimes and always with potato quality, where there are images of people's bodies floating around, like nudes. That
Right.
today is happening in high schools. It's happening in high definition. It's happening on the second date. It's happening maybe before you even meet in real life. Like the amount of nudes going around is crazy. Like I never sent a dick pic in my life, and now people are like, it's send that before we even go out, depending on, I don't know which app you're on. And then so that is why I don't want my kids to have phones in their bedrooms when they go to bed. For boys, I don't want them to just be watching high bandwidth porn all night, because like when I was in high school, I totally would have done that if I could have. And for girls, I don't want them being on camera or taking nudes and sending them off to unscrupulous, or frankly any boy, because the minute you send a nude to one person, it is getting shown
now
to other people.
I have to jump in here because I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to play. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I have to challenge you on this. Why are you drawing a different line for boys and girls? Why would you want your boy sending a nude to someone, or why wouldn't you want your girl watching porn? Why did you talk about them differently?
Sure, because men are scum. There's males and females consume pornography. Males just consume it at a higher rate. It is a concern for both. I also don't want my little sister to be just watching a bunch of porn. I think it's bad for your brain, and again, I think it makes certain brain centers outsized. But then, in the terms of the nudes, I think that's also bad for both boys and girls, and everything else in between. But it is just, boys are shittier and hornier and are goading the opposite sex or the people that they like into sending these pictures. So I think it's just more of a risk. But regardless of sex or gender, those photos are forever. And can you imagine if that just like got leaked and went around your school, everyone had a picture of you? That's just like
I don't know
career
how I would
ending.
go to school the next day.
Yeah.
I would feel like my world was completely collapsed, honestly speaking. Like putting myself back in high school Linus's shoes.
Then
And that's
I
because it's
think
really small.
I honestly, I think the best defense for that is just trying to teach, responsibility with the tech. It's responsibility and etiquette.
So, I mean, oh man, how do you police that though? I mean, being savvy about Discord has already been a benefit. We actually had to have some really good conversations with my eldest about what appeared to be the brother of one of his IRL, like school friends, harassing him online. And what this older brother was doing was harassing my son through his younger brother's account. So he would get these really out of character messages from someone who was ostensibly his friend, like swearing at him and things like that. Like kids, probably, I guess it was 8 at this time. And he just kind of didn't know how to deal with it. And fortunately, I know how to go through the message logs. I was going through and I was seeing some of this stuff, and I went and I sat down with him and I was talking to him. I was like, okay, look, do you need help with this? And he goes, no, I think I have it under control. I think it is his brother, and I'm going to ignore him. And if my friend can't keep his brother off his account, then I'm just going to block him, and we will not talk on Discord, and I will only talk to him in person. I was like, wow, that is an astonishingly mature response for an 8-year-old. You must take after your mother. And then when ultimately that did not fully solve the problem, because there were issues with the Minecraft server that he and his friends share, he came to me and basically said, okay, look, Dad, I do need help because someone's destroying my stuff in Minecraft and they won't admit it. I need you to talk to Jake to check the logs. And when I told him that, hey, you know what, it's actually a different friend. It's not the bully older brother. It's a different friend that destroyed your stuff. He basically kind of went, hey, my dad checked the logs. It is you, and I really don't appreciate you not being honest with me. And if you can't, then I don't know if we'll be able to be friends anymore. And I was like, whoa, dropping the goodbye bombs. Overall, I think he's doing a great job. He's come to us, but I don't know how we would help him with that if we weren't savvy enough to know who he's talking to and what he's talking about. Ultimately, the bully older brother got nailed by the school, actually. Some other kid over some other interaction notified the teachers, and credit to my kid's school. They basically went around and sent a bulletin to all parents to go check their kids' Discord. And it sent like instructions for how to go through the logs and see if they've been being toxic. And that whole family of boys ended up banned by their parents from Discord, and their parents called us and apologized. So it's all kind of sorted out, happy ending. But man, these are just things my parents did not have to deal with, or at least didn't know. I mean, I was telling people my age and like approximately where I lived on the Palace when I was like 13 years old.
Oh my goodness! And how scary it was for your parents. You're trying to protect your children, and you're telling me suddenly there's a little window through which a strange man can interact with my children, and you have no idea who this person is. That's insane. That is so insane. But now it's normalized. It's completely normalized.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, what are your tech plans this weekend? What tech will your kids interact with this weekend?
You know what's great is my little sister is away in a low cell service area, and she didn't pack it herself, but I made sure that her new book was in her bag when she left. So hopefully she's doing a whole lot of not tech this weekend.
Honestly, probably they'll be playing some Magic School Bus on an old compact desktop, or maybe watching the odd show on Netflix. But beyond that, or watching me play a game.
That's a genre That's a genre of games that I feel like either maybe I missed it. I don't know what happened, but I feel like it is not as prevalent anymore. And I
Hmm.
think they're great. Those point and click style games, like the Magic School Bus ones you're talking about. You mean
Yeah.
the old ones for like Windows 9X, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's
Yeah.
I've got a couple
So
old ISOs.
we used to play those all the time in my house, and they were really great tools for learning to read. There was one that my sisters used to play all the time called George Shrinks, and it was basically just a narrated book, but with little animations when you click on things. It was like a fun way to, and the text would highlight, so you'd see all the words on the screen. It would kind of read it to you. And when I was looking for games like that, the only ones that I found were those old ones, and I ended up firing up. Like a Pentium emulator. So you can actually emulate that hardware and
Yeah.
run Windows 98 on like that
PCEM.
era. Yeah. I think that's the one.
Yeah.
Um, and I got it running for them, and they absolutely love it. Mixed Up Mother Goose is another really good one. All that classic
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, I should try
The,
that because at my house I'm doing the opposite. I'm taking her Oculus Quest 2 and loading it with like the International Space Station tour and visit a virtual Anne Frank's house. And that was boring even for the adults after 5 minutes.
um,
All
yeah. I
right.
mean,
Well,
it's
I think we've
sorry.
got to wrap up here, guys. Take a moment to plug your social media accounts. Where can people follow you on Facebook, Instagram, anything like that?
I'm at James_Strive on Instagram and I think on Twitter too. Yeah, I'm not banned anymore. Hey.
I'm just Brian Hines on Facebook. I honestly do have an Instagram I don't use, but otherwise, honestly, through Discord, Turbo Demon 22 or the LTT forums. I'm Brian the Electrician.
All right. Well, guys, this was great. Our next room is going to be about our favorite and least favorite games with Luc Lafreniere. That's going to be a heck of a Friday next week. So that'll be at 4 p.m. Pacific time, right before the WAN show. So if you tune into the Facebook Live audio room, you're going to have like 2.5 straight hours of Linus and Luke talking. But it's just that the first hour is going to be something we don't usually talk about, which I'm pretty excited about because Luke has some great contributions to that conversation. I am sure. If there's a game, he has played it, and if there's a bad one, he has hated it.
Well, thanks
All
for having
right.
us on, Linus.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.